The queue for bread stretches into the gray dawn. Women clutch empty baskets. Children press against their mothers' skirts, hollow-eyed. This is Paris, spring of 1789, and the old world has mere months to live. The air carries wood smoke and desperation. The clatter of carriage wheels over cobblestones where nobles pass without seeing, their silks floating above a city that seethes with rage. The cafes buzz with sedition. The printing presses churn pamphlets that speak the unspeakable. King Louis XVI sits at Versailles, distant, while his capital starves and plots. The Third Estate has been summoned, and beneath every conversation, every transaction runs the electric current of transformation. The sense that what comes next will be written in fire and blood. Versailles was excess-made architecture, a monument to divine right where 1,700 rooms glittered with gilt and crystal. The Hall of Mirrors stretched the length of a city street, candlelight multiplying infinitely in glass, ceiling frescoes depicting Louis XIV as Apollo, god and monarch fused. Here, courtiers paraded in impossible wigs and jewel-encrusted coats, their perfumes failing to mask the stench beneath velvet and lace. A chambermaid empties a chamber pot into the garden below, where fountains dance and hedges form perfect geometry. The contrast is absolute, marble floors polished like water, while in Paris, mud swallows whole streets. Versailles was France in miniature, beautiful, decadent, and utterly removed from the suffering beyond its gates. The Palais Royal stood in the heart of Paris, arcaded galleries surrounding gardens where revolution fermented in plain sight. Under its colonnades, cafes spilled their patrons onto stone walkways, lawyers, journalists, students, merchants, all arguing, debating, their voices rising with wine and fury. The Duc d'Orléans had opened his palace to commerce and discourse, and it became the city's powder keg. Printing presses operated openly in the cellars. Pamphlets passed from hand to hand, radical ideas spreading like contagion. A young lawyer from Arras, Maximilien Robespierre, takes his coffee here, listening, calculating, his pale eyes missing nothing. The smell of coffee mingles with tobacco smoke and the acrid bite of printer's ink. At night, the gardens grow rowdier still, gamblers, pickpockets, and philosophes all mingling beneath the same lanterns. The Palais Royal was the crucible where the revolution found its voice, where abstract philosophy hardened into concrete fury. Les Halles market sprawls across the city's center, a kingdom of desperation and commerce where the price of bread becomes a political crisis. Fishwives gut their catch in the dawn light, hands slick with scales. Their voices carry across the stalls, coarse, furious, demanding. The harvest has failed again. Flour is scarce, hoarded by speculators. A loaf that cost 4 sous last year costs 14 today. Women who feed their families on copper coins do the revolution's arithmetic in their heads and find the sum intolerable. Wagons arrive from the countryside, and crowds gather, suspicious, ready to riot if the grain doesn't reach the bakers. The stink here is overwhelming: rotting vegetables, animal offal, sweat, and hunger. A baker's boy stacks his master's loaves in the window, and a woman watches, counting her coins twice, knowing they won't stretch to Saturday. Les Halles was Paris's belly, and that belly was empty. These women, the market wives, the laundresses, the seamstresses, will march on Versailles in October and drag the king back to Paris by force. Their fury is patient, building, inexorable. Notre Dame rises above the Ile de la Cité, Gothic towers dark against the sky, stone saints weathered by centuries. Inside, shadows pool beneath vaulted ceilings, candlelight flickering before the altar, where the archbishop celebrates Mass for the privileged. The air is thick with incense and Latin murmurs, ritual unchanged since Charlemagne, yet the congregation has dwindled. Faith itself has become contested. In the cafes, Voltaire's mockery echoes. In the salons, reason battles revelation. A priest in threadbare cassock kneels before a side chapel, his prayers earnest, his stipend unpaid for 3 months. The church owns 1/3 of France's land while parish priests starve. Notre Dame stood immovable, eternal, but the ground beneath had already begun to crack. The Bastille squats on the eastern edge of Paris, 8 towers of medieval stone enclosing a fortress prison that has become the physical embodiment of royal tyranny. Its walls are 40 feet thick. Its cannons point inward toward the city, a perpetual threat. A clockmaker peers from a window across the street, watching guards patrol the ramparts, noting their routines, counting their number. Inside, perhaps 7 prisoners languish in cells. The Bastille hasn't been truly full in decades, but its symbolism outweighs its function. It represents arbitrary power, the letters de cachet that can imprison a man without trial, the king's justice that answers to no one. When Parisians speak of liberation, they dream of storming these walls. On July 14th, just 3 months from now, they will. The mob will overwhelm the garrison, decapitate the governor, parade his head through the streets on a pike, and tear the fortress down stone by stone until nothing remains but the memory of what stood here, tyranny and its destruction. Paris in 1789 was a city divided against itself, wealth and want existing in such proximity that collision became inevitable. The aristos in their carriages, the hungry in the bread lines, the radicals in the cafes, and the king in his palace, all occupying the same moment but living in different worlds. Yet those worlds were collapsing into one another. The Estates General would convene. The Third Estate would declare itself the National Assembly. The people would take up arms, and within 5 years, Paris would reinvent itself and remake the world, a laboratory of liberty and terror whose experiments still shape our politics today. What began with hunger ended with the guillotine, and the echoes still reverberate through every revolution that followed. I hope you enjoyed your tour of Paris on the eve of revolution. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for future journeys through history.